And you're going to mute yourself unless you talk to me.
I have a question.
You have a question already?
Yes. How do we change your layout? Mine is like I can see everyone.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, change what? I found it. Okay.
Hang on. Let's see. D-Day command decisions. Yay. Okay. Let's see if this works.
Lily, how do you do it?
I'm changing my layout.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
No.
Yes.
It's completely black.
Yes.
Can you now?
I can see it. It says D-Day command decisions.
Yes. Now it says. Now I can see it. No,
Okay,
it still says. Yeah. I can see it. We're good.
Okay. So you still see where it says D-Day command decisions, right?
Yes.
Okay. It hasn't changed because I'm trying something new today.
No, it hasn't changed.
Okay. So sweet. Hey, you know what? Google Chrome, they've like really, or whatever we're doing, has really upped their game in the last couple of days. I've noticed like it's much better. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about D-Day. Yes, sir.
I watched an Expedition Unknown about D-Day, and guess what?
What?
There was not one bunk. There was like 3 bunkers on the hill above the beach, but the big guns were actually 2 miles inland.
Yes, because they could shoot really far. That's a good point. Yeah, so when I went to see the guns, like you can't even see the ocean. It's really weird. It's just like a field and there's a gun and they had to like somebody would be a spotter in front and be like, "Hey, you need to shoot to the right or the left." Yeah, that's a good point, Sade.
You've been to Normandy?
I did. It was the year before I had you guys the first time when Jacqueline was in France. It's really awesome. It was so exciting because somebody could answer all my questions. Okay, on the top of the page, you can just write D-Day. You don't need to write command decisions, even though you will be making decisions.
Are we going to be put in groups or that's not going to work on this thing?
No. So normally you guys have like a packet and then you decide like how you would plan D-Day, but we're changing it up, make it more exciting. Okay. So this is a picture of D-Day, and people talked about who saw this. It was just like all you could see was ship after ship after ship and plane after plane after plane. And the people who lived in England where like this flotilla left from talked about how like all day all they saw was military equipment. It was crazy. So it was like as far as you could see. All right. So you're going to be writing the purple facts, and they're numbered 1 through 10. That's all you need to write is the purple facts 1 through 10. And then you're going to have like questions that you can answer. You can either write down your answer or just think about it in your head. It's your choice. Okay. So your task is you are General Eisenhower, and you are making plans for the Allied invasion of France. It is codenamed Operation Overlord, and we now call this D-Day. So the first thing you need to write down is the purple, number 1. D-Day, which is called Operation Overlord, was when the Allies, which was the good guys, US, Britain, and France, landed their troops in France to begin the defeat of Germany. I even have my Normandy cup today, so I'm ready to go. And if you drive out to Colorado, you can stop by and see General Eisenhower's house. It's in Kansas. It's actually a very interesting museum. So next time you go to Colorado, it's like the halfway point. It's a good place to stop, stretch your legs.
Have we written anything?
We're writing it right now.
I'm sorry.
Just the purple part, and then we're supposed to write D-Day on the top.
Just write D-Day at the top, and you're just writing the purple part.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're making decisions for ourselves.
You are making the decisions. So it took them. So we entered the war in December 1941, and it took us until spring of 1944 to be able to land and defeat Hitler in Europe. So it took us like 3 years to plan this. So a lot of planning was involved in this. All right, can I switch?
No. Yes.
Right quick, Audrey.
I'm running as fast as I can.
So I don't know what the word overlord comes from, but every operation that you have in the military has a code name. So when Hitler invaded Russia, it was Operation Barbarossa. When we
Ponderosa?
Barbarossa,
Oh, I was like, say Ponderosa?
yes, he
That's
was thinking
from a
state.
show.
Let's see, there was Operation Torch, which was when the United States and England went to Africa to invade Africa with the Nazis were in Africa. So each thing has a code name so that the Germans don't know what it is. All right, I am switching.
No.
No, too bad. Okay, the Atlantic Wall, number 2. The European coastline is heavily defended by Hitler's Atlantic Wall, which is big guns, mines, and machine guns. So this is like, you can see if you look at this picture, there's the dude. That's the gun. So these, like Sage said, would be further inland. You need really strong ground to hold these up. You just couldn't have them on the beach. And these would shoot miles. They would shoot their big projectiles for miles. And then on the actual beaches, you would have machine gun like pillboxes. And they also had, you'd say, they'd call them anti-aircraft guns, like the guns they'd use to shoot the planes down. And these were 88 guns. And a lot of the guys who talked about landing, when they would remember, they said it sounded like a sewing machine because there were so many bullets coming out of these big guns. And then there were mines in the water. So those, if a ship hits a mine, it's like an explosive in the water and it goes boom. So this was a lot of concern was put into, like, how are we going to land when this whole area is so heavily defended? And the coastline is defended all the way up here, like by Greenland, all the way down Norway, all the way through Denmark, Germany, Belgium, France. That's all defended by Hitler. It's thousands of miles of these gun emplacements to protect the Nazis from the invading allies.
Why is Sweden white? Were they neutral?
Sweden is technically neutral, but they gave lots of iron ore to the Germans, so they left them alone mostly, but they still were helping the Germans.
Miss Ballard, is Russia like our biggest, like, I guess, enemy right now?
I would say China is
Afghanistan,
probably our
right?
biggest enemy right now.
What
China?
about Afghanistan?
The Russians, I'm sorry, Lily, but we still are not their friends.
But I can make us friends.
You're going to
Good
make us
friends.
allies again? You know, the United States and Russia, our alliances haven't worked out too well.
But the thing is,
We're mad at China because
but we're mad at Afghanistan. We're at war with Afghanistan right now.
Actually,
right?
Iran.
Iran.
We're not even at war with them though.
Do you
Yeah.
guys remember earlier
Yeah.
this year how there was like
we're
all
angry with the
that, like,
Chinese
oh no,
because their
World War III
government
thing?
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah.
we're not biggest enemies.
Okay, can I flip the page?
We're enemies with Afghanistan.
Cool, I'm
Iran,
flipping
and
the
Iraq.
page.
Yes.
Okay. All right, number 3. General Eisenhower is in charge of all the Allied troops in Europe. And this is very important because remember, we talked about how there's like multiple countries that are the Allies. We've talked about the big ones like the US and Britain and France, but there's other countries too that are also part of the Allies, like Poland, which has been taken over, and Denmark. So any of these troops that escaped the Germans are in Europe and they're waiting they're in England and they're waiting to land at D-Day. So General Eisenhower, an American, is telling the British and the French what to do. That's a big deal because those are sovereign countries and we're telling them this is what you're going to do. So he's one of the most powerful guys in the world at this moment.
His name is Dwight.
Dwight. Like from The Office, Dwight.
Yes.
That might be his like
I'm so
45th
happy.
cousin.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't.
Your 45th
share a
cousin?
first name in common with somebody.
How many cousins do you have?
So his
know.
nickname,
5
his
cousins.
nickname is Ike, I-K-E. No one calls him Dwight.
Like Eichelberger, as in Mrs. Ike. Eichelberger.
Yeah.
I have no idea who that is.
She's up at
She's a
West.
Westminster person. She came over to our house a little while
That's
ago.
probably why I don't know who it is.
Isn't she the gal that does the singing?
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
the person at the singing thing. She went, I'm gonna pick on Lily Pulse because I know her.
Yes,
That's the
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Her.
Okay, guys, are we done with this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so you don't need to write anything for this, but a lot of people always ask where the D comes in D-Day. You can ask your parents and they probably won't know. So the National World War II Museum, who is like the experts in this, say it actually doesn't stand for anything. It means that D-Day is like the day it starts. So when you list like an operation, you have like, think about like when you're shooting off a rocket, right? You say T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, right? And then you have liftoff. So liftoff would be T. So D-Day means it's the day it starts. It's like D plus 0. And then the next day is D plus 1, D plus 2. So actually, the D doesn't stand for anything. So you don't need to remember that. It's just some fun snippet of history.
But my dad knows.
It's like the D stands for the day.
Yes, D-Day.
Of course.
Like the day.
Right. So this is Europe in 1944. So we've jumped ahead. We talked a lot about the beginning of the war. We talked about when America enters the war, and then we skipped ahead a bunch of years. So now we're in 1944. And look, the map is much different because now it's not just England that's by itself. Now it has a big, scary buddy, the Russians. Okay. So Joseph Stalin, not a very nice man, is in charge of Russia. And every day he gets on his phone and he says, "Hey, Winston Churchill, when are you going to help me defeat these Germans?" So the Germans are always attacking the Russians, and the Russians want the British and the Americans to attack over here so that the Germans will move their troops away from Russia. So he asked them for years and years and years, "Hey, when are you going to attack? When are you going to attack? When's D-Day coming?" And finally, in 1944, they think they're ready. So there's a lot of area that's still controlled by the Axis powers, Germany and Italy, but this is about to change. Okay,
Wait,
here's
Iceland helped us?
What?
Iceland helped us?
Iceland was an ally, yes, but
Really?
they are a very small country. So I think we had planes that would refuel there, but we didn't really use them very much. So, all right, first decision. You've got 3 guys. If you are General Eisenhower, who would you choose? You get to choose 2 to be in charge of the troops with you. So it's going to be General Eisenhower, and he's going to have 2 guys who are going to help him. So your first guy is General Patton. And a good thing about General Patton is he's regarded as the best, most American fighting general. Problem with General Patton is he gets in big trouble because he goes to a hospital and slaps a soldier who had shell shock, which we would say PTSD, and calls him a coward. So this was in the newspaper. It was really embarrassing to everyone. And General Eisenhower was really mad he did this. So that's the first choice, General Patton. General Bradley,
Where do we write this?
from Missouri, and he's considered the soldier's soldier. All the soldiers like him because he's very personable. He's well liked by those he commands. Unfortunately, General Bradley has served under Patton in Africa, so General Patton's been his boss, and he doesn't have a lot of experience planning things like D-Day, so he's not as experienced. And then we have General Montgomery. Pros. He is very liked by the British people because he defeated the Germans in Africa, and he's a great tactician, which means he's a great planner. Cons. Unfortunately, he is very difficult to work with, and he likes to be in charge and tell you what to do. So, of these 3 guys, who would you choose if you chose 2?
Oh, the last 2.
I would
Last
say,
2?
Yeah, I was gonna say the last 2
the
too.
first and the second.
I'd
Oh,
Yeah,
choose-
I choose the first and the second.
I'd choose Patton and Montgomery.
So, on the chat section, because now you can still see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, on the chat section, write which 2 you would choose.
Can we write numbers?
Yes. This is a really important decision for Eisenhower. Remember, he's in charge of all of the guys in Europe. He's the most important guy in Europe at this point. And Winston Churchill has complete faith in him. Ooh, James is even doing it in Spanish. Very nice. Okay. So the decision is that he chooses Omar Bradley and General Montgomery, choice 2 and 3.
Yay!
Patton, he tells General Patton, you know, you're a great soldier, but you've embarrassed me too much. I can't trust you anymore. And this way he has a British commander, because remember, he's in charge of the British soldiers as well. And he has an American commander. So it ends up being General Bradley and General Montgomery.
I would not want to be working with a guy who slaps sick people. It is not right.
Yes. But
He's fearless,
General
bro.
Eisenhower is really smart, and he has a different use for General Patton later. Okay. All right. Decision 2. Where are you going to land your people? So your 2 choices are Calais, which is this part right here, or like up here in France, or Normandy, which is right here. Okay, here. So here's what you need to think about. You need to have a port that has docks, because you've got to land all those boats with your soldiers. So Calais has a wonderful dock and a big port that you could land all your stuff. Then you need to consider also is you want to be as close to Germany as possible. If you land in Calais, look how close you are to Germany. If you land in Normandy, look how much further you are from Germany. You also want the area to be less defended. If you're Germany, you're concerned about this area because it's really, really close to Germany, and it's really close to England. You don't have to go across the channel very far. Look, it's only 60 miles. And if you're General Eisenhower, you want to surprise the Germans. The Germans think you're coming to Calais. This is really far. It's not as easy to land here. So in the chat box, right, would you rather land at Calais, this one, or Normandy, this one? Go ahead and write in the chat box.
It's very
There's
quiet.
someone in Normandy.
Are we supposed to be writing?
Narnia. I
No,
know.
you only need to write the purple. It's easier. Let's just do the chat box for your decision then. Okay. So, oops. You're right. The actual decision is Normandy. So, although it's further away from Germany, and they're going to have to travel further to defeat Germany, it's chosen because the beaches are less heavily guarded. So number 4, you're going to write the Allies decided to land their troops in Normandy, France. So they have to come up with a solution then to deal with the port, because they need a port, remember? And they know that the war is going to last longer because they have to go many more miles to actually get to Germany and defeat the Germans.
What's number 3?
Number 3 was General Eisenhower was in charge.
Okay.
Wasn't Dwight D. Eisenhower president?
Yes, good job, Sage. He is actually president in 1952, reelected 1956, and then the next president after him is Kennedy.
Was he a good
Was
president?
he the one who had like the pin saying "I like Ike"?
Yes, he was. He was the one who had the I like Ike pin. He was a pretty good president. He had a lot to deal with the Cold War with the Russians, so he never really trusted the Russians, so he was a good president to be in charge. Every time you drive down an interstate, he was the guy who developed the interstate system. So
He's pretty
that's what I
smart.
think about him. And he did a lot of national parks, also a good thing. So Kit said, can you guys still see me?
No.
Yes.
No? Okay.
I can.
So Kit was asking about the I like Ike buttons. So people would wear these when you
Everyone
became to vote for him for president. I like Ike. Okay. All right. Number 5, as they're continuing to plan how they're going to land at Normandy, they decide the troops are going to land at 5 beaches, and these beaches are going to be code-named. So the beaches for the Americans are named after states, Utah and Omaha, or states and city, I guess. And then the British ones are Gold, Juno, and Sword.
Wait, Ballard, 4 beaches or 5 beaches?
I'm sorry, that should say 5. I can't count. Please write 5. Thank you. So the reason that the British and the Canadian beaches are named Gold, Juno, and Sword, originally Juno was going to be named Jelly Beach, but that just sounds silly, so they renamed it. But it was like goldfish, jellyfish, swordfish. But Jelly Beach just sounds stupid, so they renamed it. So if you go,
Wait, was there something?
if what?
Never mind.
Okay. So when you go, if you go to Normandy and you go see stuff, you can go to Bayeux and you can go see all these beaches around here. They're actually really spaced out. So when I went, I spent a full day seeing beaches and stuff. And I went and saw the guns at Arromanches and then these 2 beaches. And that's all I had time for. They're really far apart. I think they're like 70 miles wide for how long the beaches are.
Why would they do that? Is it because they have a lot of ships or something?
Say it again, Kit.
Is it because like some places were better to land or they had more ships? Why would they space them out?
Oh, that's good. That's a good question. So they do have a lot of ships, so they need a lot of space. But you also want the biggest mile of coastline that you can control. So that way, if the Germans block you here, you can go out here or here. The more of an area you control, the easier it is to push down versus being in a narrow little slot. It's hard to fight the Germans. Good question. All right. So remember we said, what are we going to do for a port? Well, Winston Churchill, who just is super amazing, is like, I can solve that for you. And he comes up with this idea of building a port. So he sends all these things called mulberries, which are like big barges, to France, and they build their own port. So they have all of these docks that they build. And it worked for about 2 days. And then there's a huge storm. And one of the mulberries sinks. And you can still actually see it if you go to France. Also, remember we said you got to get all these guys from the boats on the beaches. And one of the problems at Dunkirk was the big boats can't get to the beach. So there's a guy in New Orleans, and he developed something which is like a landing ship. So if you've been on a duck boat tour, right, they go on the land and the water.
I love duck boats.
Good. So they have these boats, and the bottoms of it open up, and they can drive onto the beach. And this is where these develop from, because these boats get really close. They can land, drop the back, and the guys can run off on the beach. And they call them Higgins boats. I don't know about you, but I get super duper seasick, and these are flat bottom boats, so you feel every wave.
I've did those before.
Except
I
you
would
also
love
get
that so
lasered when you
much.
jump out of that thing.
I would be ready to get out. Although they talked about how the guys, it was in the middle of a storm when they landed, and the waves were really big, and they talked about how the guys were throwing up all over the boat. I would just be like, yeah, just get me out. So
I would love the feeling of just waves and waves. I don't know why. I just love
no, Atlantic.
you would.
it. I don't get seasick.
I've been
Trust
in
me,
some
I
of the
do.
calmest
I
water,
literally,
deep sea fishing.
I
and
love
almost
going
threw
up and down and up and down.
Yeah,
It's so
so
much fun.
Really feel like
Also,
not like
on-
I don't care if there's big waves. There's just,
okay, Ms. Polsky, thank
don't
you.
get seasick.
So they have these little baby boats where the men would jump off of, but later on, after the beaches had been secured, the Germans had been kicked off the beaches, they could land these boats called LSTs. Look how big this boat is. It goes right up to the shore. They pull down a ramp, and then people can walk on, or they can drive the tank off. So these boats are a game changer in amphibious landings, which means you land from the water and go to the beach. You can still see there's an LST in Evansville, Indiana, where I went to school, and sometimes it comes to St. Louis. So it's actually really neat to see it.
So whenever they would get the tanks off, I thought the big hills or the big cliffs, isn't it on cliffs?
It is on cliffs. Yeah. So
how would they-
Omaha is on cliffs. So they had to have, there were only certain exits they could go out, Sage. That's a good question. So they only could drive the tank certain ways, and they had to clear those ways first. Good question. Right. How do you fool the Germans? What would be something you could do to confuse the Germans? In your chat, write me one way you think you could confuse those silly Germans. Any idea? Anything creative? Ooh, I like that, James. Ooh, send fake boats. Very creative. Oh, you guys are so smart. This is awesome.
Wear a bush's disguise.
I love it. I'm so lucky. Okay. Tell them in code sorta, make them believe though that you are landing somewhere else.
Like in
And
code.
lots of planes without people in it, and they shoot at them, but they just explode and kill them. Make them go
Didn't they
somewhere
have
else. You guys
Teslas?
are all right. This is all stuff they did. I don't know about
They
this
wear
guy,
bush's disguise?
but they did wear camouflage. I guess that works. Air show, yep. Send fake boats, yep. Fake invasion, yep. Lie, yep. Uniforms that look German, yep. You guys are
Disguise
brilliant.
in a bush. Yep.
Okay, yeah. Bush, that might be stretching it a little bit. So what they did is they did something called Operation Fortitude, and it's a grand deception. They actually got people in from Hollywood to help them plan this. First, they got a guy who was double agent who lied like English.
What?
And he was living in Scotland, but he convinced the Germans he was living in. He was living in
Oh my God.
Spain, but he convinced the Germans he was living in Scotland, and he knew all this stuff about the invasion. And he was telling them it'll be in Calais.
Miss
Germans
Ballard, I
totally
can't
did.
see anybody. Never mind. I can see everybody now.
Cool.
Miss Ballard.
Yes, ma'am.
He looks like our Latin teacher.
He does.
He's
All right, you guys said set up a fake army. That's exactly what they did. Remember General Patton? He's sitting around with nothing to do. They say, "Hey, General Patton, you don't get a real army, but you can be in charge of a fake army, and you're gonna get fake tanks like this." So these are guys holding a balloon tank. Look at that,
That's kind of awesome.
awesome.
That looks really cool.
Miss
So-
Ballard, so
real
wasn't General Patton considered a hero after the war, though?
He was. He unfortunately died right after the war, which might have been better for him because he couldn't open his mouth anymore. But the Germans don't believe that Eisenhower will not have General Patton in charge of D-Day. They
Why
say
couldn't-
he's stupid. He has to be in charge. He's the most brilliant guy there is. So
Why
they
couldn't he not?
totally believe that General Patton is sitting somewhere in the south of England with this fake army.
Why could he not open his mouth?
Because he like had no idea when to stop speaking. You know what I mean?
Talking.
Okay, so this is an inflatable truck. This is a fake gun made out of wood.
What?
This is a fake plane, and these are fake barges. And at this point, they kind of know who the German secret agents are in England, and they would let them go see all this stuff. And then the German secret agents would be, Akte Liebe, and they would go back and they would get on their radio and they'd be like, ring, ring, ring. Hello, I found that there are guns everywhere in the south of England, and they're right by where they would leave for Calais. So all these secret spies that the British know about are radioing this to Germany. The German planes that fly over are seeing this in the south of England, and they're like, oh, this is all where they would leave for, like, from England if they were going to Calais. So it's confusing them.
Miss Ballard.
Huh?
Would they like do something where it's like they would send a telegram to them and be like, "We're fighting you," but then like they would get all their troops ready to fight them, and then couldn't they just come in on the other side? And then like the opposite, so then they kill them from behind. It's like they don't know where they
Yeah,
are.
that'd be a little bit more complicated than what they were able to do, but they tried all sorts of different things. So you guys talked about the air shows and the fake paratroopers,
Yeah.
right? They had these
Yeah.
fake paratroopers, which were dolls, and they were called like, it was some, I'm trying to remember the name for them. They were called like Joes or something, and they would drop them from the planes, and the Germans would see these parachutes. So they dropped them in Calais, and like different parts of France. And the Germans would be like, "Oh, the paratroopers are coming! The paratroopers!" And they'd all go run over and see what was happening. And then when they'd land, they had explosives in them, and they would explode. They also confused the Germans by dropping aluminum foil. So like the stuff your mom has in the kitchen, they would have strips of it and they would just drop it out of the airplane and it would mess up the German radar and think that there were all these different planes everywhere.
Miss
Also, hang on one more second. General Patton has this fake army, right? So Germans would expect General Patton's fake army or real army to be sending lots of messages like, "Hey, I need these supplies. Hey, this is our plan." So they have guys who are set up who are just literally sending fake messages all day about General Patton's army that the Germans can pick up on their radios. And I'm going
That would be the job that I would
I
want
meant
to
to
do.
say,
I
like,
would
that
I would
type
want to be
thing.
the person who sends fake messages to people and just makes fun stuff up.
Yeah, that would be so fun. Yeah, that would be like, because then you could just be like, we want all this food or something. It would be funny because
Mhm.
you just no.
For
I'm just imagining
5
people just like
cakes.
making
Miss Ballard, they could
fake messages.
they could also fake them out by like saying the real army has like no ammo, so then the Germans will come attack them and they'll absolutely wreck them.
That would be-
Yeah.
Like the Americans would wreck them.
Mhm. They did that in that's what they did at Midway too, right?
Mhm.
So, lots of deception with this.
Miss
So
Ballard,
number 6, we're just going to sum that all up. And the Allies confused the Germans to think they were landing, they would attack in Calais, France. So even when the real attack came, guys, and the Americans showed up in Normandy, Hitler insisted, "Oh, no, this is a diversion. They're still going to come land in Calais. I'm not sending my troops right now." Okay, so he was completely convinced because of this that they were going to Calais. So the people who were in charge of Operation Fortitude, this deception, were very, very successful, and it saved thousands of lives.
Miss Ballard,
Mhm.
about the tin thing. My
Mhm.
grandma, she was in France, and she remembers as a kid going to pick up the tinfoil they would drop.
Really,
Mm-hmm.
that is
And
so cool,
she
kid.
uses to put tinfoil on her trees because of that. Or yeah,
That is really fascinating. That is such a neat
aluminum.
question.
on her trees.
I had never even heard of that till I went to France. So I'm glad to know that's a real thing.
Cool.
I just think this is so fascinating.
They could have shot like they could have been funny. They could have gotten like in the fake cannons, they could have turned them into like confetti cannons and shoot confetti at the people.
They could, but remember the Germans never actually
Or
like
they could kill them.
came into contact with the balloon army. They just had pictures of it and their spies would see it. But yes. And well, the guys they dropped from the planes, the fake paratroopers, they did explode. There wasn't any confetti, but there was a large explosion. So
Miss Ballard,
Mhm.
money and how much money did it take to make the blow up tanks and stuff? And how many of them were there?
That's a good question, Audrey. I'm not sure on either of those, but having a fake blow-up tank would cost a lot less than a real tank, right? Oh, the fake guys, the little dummies, these were called Ruperts.
Oh, I thought that was like where the GI Joe thing comes from.
No, that's from something else. But
Miss Ballard, my dad used to collect GI Joes and have fake D-Day when he was little.
that does not surprise me at all.
Wait, but would they make them heavy, or would it just be like? So
They
like,
would
was there,
have weights in them so that they would actually
there like bombs in them? So then when
Yeah.
they touch the ground,
they
they like,
would hit the ground and the bomb would go off. I mean, these weren't big bombs, but they were just enough to the Germans would be like, "Hey, there's explosions and there's all these parachutes."
yeah.
Okay, so decision 4. We're not going to write of this because we don't have time, but how would you get information about the beaches you're landing on? This is General Montgomery and I think General Bradley here. So they've never been to these beaches. They don't have satellite information.
The French.
So what they do is they tell everybody in England, if you have pictures of the French coastline, we want you to send them to us. We're going to have this big contest to like celebrate France. They're not telling them what they really want. And then from all those pictures, they narrow them down to just get the ones of Normandy, and they're able to make maps based off of all these postcards that people send in, which is really quite
That's
interesting.
smart.
It's very smart. They also send submarines, and they'll have guys that get out at night in rafts, and they row, and they go and get soil samples, and then they go back and give the soil samples to the scientist. And it's important because you want something like this, like a rock, to land on. So this is a rock from the Omaha Beach. Because you want it to be able to support the weight of the tanks. You don't want the tanks to get stuck in the sand. No bueno. Okay. Decision 5. Some of you might know this. How will the paratroopers find their buddies when they land and not be mistaken for Germans? Go ahead and write in the chat if you have an idea. How will you let the paratroopers know each other? What will be the code? What will be the plan? There's actually 2 things they do. All right, so these are some good responses. So you guys can see my face, right?
Mm-hmm.
My lovely face. They have what a lot of you guys talked about. These are crickets. And some of the paratroopers had these, not everybody. But you would click it once, and then you're supposed to click twice. And you would have to, one person would click once, and then the second person would click twice, and that's how you knew it was the right person. These are really loud, like it hurts my ears. So you wouldn't want to do it if some German soldier is right next to you, but you could use it if you were across a field. The problem is if you're a paratrooper, you land, but you're not necessarily next to your buddies because you all jump out at different times. So you have to find each other once you get to the ground. You don't have a cell phone. Some paratroopers also use code. So they would say flash, and the other guys would say thunder. Because the Germans, they said, can't say THs. They would say thunder. So that's how you knew somebody was an American.
Miss Ballard, didn't the cricket thingies, did that sometimes sound like a person doing a gun though?
You see that in the Longest Day movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that like happened a ton, but yeah, that could be mistaken for that. So guys, go ahead and write down number 7.
Didn't a lot of the paratroopers lose things when they were in there?
Yeah, they had these bags that they had on their legs. They thought this would be this grand way to like have extra stuff land with them, because if you're a paratrooper, you have to be carrying everything you need for sometimes like a couple days or a week. So they had these leg bags, but as soon as they jumped off, the wind like ripped them off and they lost all their stuff. That was unfortunate. So I like to take you guys, usually they have a big World War II reenactment, Jefferson Barracks we go to. Unfortunately, we didn't get to go this year, but if you guys get to go next year, it's really neat to see all the equipment that these guys would have to carry. It was like lots of pounds, like going backpacking, and you'd have to carry your gun and jump out of a plane. So not Miss Ballard's cup of tea. All right, so then you would line up.
Wait, Miss Ballard, can you go back?
So you'd be sitting in the plane, and the pilot, when he got close to where the drop-off section is, there'd be a red light on the plane, and then the green light would, the red light would be right before you got there. You'd stand up, you'd suit up, and you put yourself on the, you have like a hook, and you put it on the chain, and then the green light goes, and that tells you to jump out of the plane. So these are all the guys hooked up, and you can see they have their little chain hooked up. And then they had a parachute in the front and a parachute in the back, and they would wear their helmet, and they'd have their gun, like lots and lots of stuff, and they jump out of the plane. All right, next decision, high tide or low tide? When would you want to land? So we talked about how Hitler had the Atlantic Wall. So the boats are going to have to come and land somewhere. And if they land at low tide, which the Navy wants to do, then the soldiers have to go walk further, right? But there's all these obstacles in the water. So there's what's called Belgian gates. There's
They could use that as cover.
What?
They could use the Belgian gates as cover.
They did. used a lot of these guys, these obstacles as cover. There's ramps, there's hedgehogs, there's barbed wire and mines. Then that's when you get to the actual beach. That's before you get to the end of the beach. Then you have the pillboxes, which is the machine guns, the big old guns on top of the hill. So it's not fun to be a soldier. So if you're a soldier, you want to get as close to the wall as possible so that you can't get picked off by somebody shooting at you. If you are a Navy guy, you want to be as far away from this stuff as possible. So you want to land here. The other thing is, if you are in the Air Force and you're dropping all these paratroopers, you want it to be on a night with a full moon so you can see where you're dropping them. So you have a lot of constraints on when you can do this. So would you rather go at high tide or low tide? Right in the comment section. Do you think that they should drop off the guys at high tide up here or at low tide down here? Okay, so General Eisenhower, ever the diplomat, comes up with a compromise. And this is, guys, this is the stuff that would be on the beach. You'd have to be driving your boat around. Not much fun. So the invasion will be 1 to 3 hours after low tide. So it's like the halfway point. Okay. And this shows the guys going to the beaches. You can see this is Omaha Beach. As Sage said, there's a big old hill that you have to eventually get up. You can see where the boats are dropping the guys off. The beat guys have to run up the beach to the hill and not get shot. And this is just an amazing picture of the ramp has gone down. The guys are waiting in the water with all of their pounds of stuff to get to the beach, to get to the cliff, to fight the Germans. I just can't even imagine how terrifying this would be. It makes me think of like when you're on a roller coaster and you're going up, 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 right? And you get to the top and you look down and you see everything and you go, ah! I think it must have been something similar to these guys where you get to the beach and the gate goes down and you got to run as fast as you can. Just that feeling of adrenaline pumping through you. Okay, so what would you need to be successful? How many men, planes, boats, troops, or supplies? We will finish this next week when we finish up the war. But I hope you guys enjoyed learning about D-Day. And then we'll finish up with D-Day starting next week. And then we'll talk about the atomic bomb and the end of the war. And that will be the end of history, guys. So if you have any questions, you're welcome to stay on and talk to me. I am meeting with Kit after that, and I will talk to you if you have any other questions. Okay?
Hi.
Bye.
Why is there like in one of the